Hello and welcome to Your Employment Matters. I'm Beverly Williams and I'm here to help you navigate your career. This is for anyone who's searching for their dream job or promotion, or perhaps you're just looking to hang on to the job you have. Today's work environments are multi-generational, multi-religious, multinational, multiracial, and multi-gender identity. Add market disruptors like Amazon and Lyft, along with the addition of AI, and it's easy to see why finding and keeping a job is such a challenge. Employment success and even employment survival depend on your ability to adapt. That's why my goal for this 30-minute podcast is to first advocate embracing change and differences, and second, to encourage you to proactively assume responsibility for your career. Get your work week off to a good start by listening to Your Employment Matters every Monday. Find out how to own your career and get the best practices for making your employment matter. Hi, everyone. It's Beverly Williams. Well, today I have a very lovely, I can't even describe how I met and how I reacted to one of her recent offers, but I'm just going to move into it the normal way. But her generosity really kind of overwhelmed me because in today's age and time, we don't see that kind of sharing and networking the way we should. And I'm going to try to do better myself. In fact, I was out supporting a friend last night who's running for public office, and I should have been home doing more work on my podcast interviews, but that remains to be seen. But my guest today is Ann Mracek. Got that right, Ann?
Got it right. A+.
Now, Ann is the author of Unpacking the Attic, A Path to Healing Your Inner Child. Now, Ann's book, and it's one of many that she's written, is now available on Amazon. Now, Ann's employment journey is multifaceted, eclectic, and really unique. But I'm going to leave it to her to share her employment story and tell you how she moved through her employment life and arrived where she is today. As I said before, I met Ann on an online authors group, and I found her to be unexpectedly kind and generous. So I welcome you, Ann, and really thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much. This is fun. I love it when I can connect with a fellow author. It's really lovely.
You know, it is really interesting how people who write reach that point. You know, it's the journey is interesting too. Maybe I'll do another podcast on authors and their journey to writing, because
Yes.
everyone has a different reason, a different perspective, a different process. So there's a lot to be learned out there from people who are taking different paths.
Yes, it's true.
And that's what we need to remember. Everybody's journey is not the same. And there are lessons to be learned from almost everyone we meet.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the way I feel. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, where you're from?
Yes, I'm born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. Left just for a little while to go to college, KU, University of Kansas, and then came right back to St. Louis. So I've really been Midwest based my whole life. I had a childhood that was very challenging, which Unpacking the Attic delves into. But I started teaching piano lessons at a very, very young age. I was a prodigy at piano. I thought I was going to be a concert pianist. And that was my first job trajectory, if you will, my first goal. I had Schumann's Piano Concerto in A minor ready to perform with the symphony at age 14.
Now, I didn't know that. That was one of your talents that I was unaware of.
Yes. So My original job trajectory was concert pianist. My coach and my teacher, my piano teacher, was actively looking for symphonies that would let me audition. Most of them have a child labor law thing where you can't work at 14. So several of them had agreed that once I turned 16, they would audition me. So I was practicing, very focused, laser focused, literally 7 to 8 hours a day at the
Oh,
piano.
wow.
And this was in addition to going through high school and junior high, even and college. And so I was very excited to finally hit my 16th birthday. I had just turned 16. I'd had my driver's license for 2 weeks, and I was going to high school in the morning. And I was sitting there parked in traffic. It was stopped. There was a tanker truck trying to maneuver his way into the gas station, and he had the line of cars backed up and stopped as he tried to get in. And suddenly there was this explosion of pain and sound, and I blacked out.
Oh, God.
Turns out my algebra teacher, who I really liked, wasn't paying attention and slammed into the back of my car at 40 miles an hour. Didn't see that the traffic had stopped for this tanker truck to maneuver. Broke my neck. Now, this was in 1972, before cars had headrests. And actually, I'm one of the people you can thank for getting headrests in cars.
What about seatbelts? Did you have a seatbelt?
I had a seatbelt on, but no headrest. So the head went back with, uninhibited. And it smashed my spine to the point that my top vertebrae, the atlas that holds your skull to your neck, actually was crushed, completely crushed, to the point that now it has actually reabsorbed, it dissolved. It was like powdered, if you can imagine. So if you see my x-ray, you would laugh. I have my head floating, and then the vertebrae starts like below. So there's the vertebrae that's supposed to connect your head and your spine. It's gone.
My goodness.
I know. If you look at my x-ray, you think, how is this person alive? And yet,
was it the surgery? Was it the surgery that?
Well, that was the interesting thing. They wanted to screw a halo into my skull and open my spine and put a rod down my spine, and I would have been completely immobilized from age 16 on. No mobility at all. And I just said no. Absolutely no. I went to the chiropractor every single day. He kept what was there in alignment so it healed straight. And I just powered through that pain. And I kept a towel wrapped around my neck, a cervical pillow during the day and a towel at night. And I drank rum and Coke because I didn't want to get hooked on Darvons for pain management. And,
because you could have become an alcoholic.
I didn't. I just barely did enough to be able to fall asleep. And then I kept constantly envisioning myself being on a stage and dancing and performing, because I had always danced. I started dancing when I was 4. And I kept seeing this image. I kept feeling it, breathing it. How does it feel? How does it look? What are the sounds? I was living it in my mind. And I kept telling my body and the universe, that's where I was headed. I kept projecting this image for myself. And 2 years later, I was singing and dancing on the stage at Six Flags over Mid-America.
Wow.
2 years later. That shows you the power of your spirit being able to tell the universe what you want, project that life you want for yourself, and keep moving toward it. And don't take no for an answer. And that works with everything. That's, as I see, our power of manifesting our own life's purpose, right?
But you did the work to move through that, though.
Yeah, you do. You have to do the work.
It's not just wishing and hoping it. Thinking it's going to happen. You're right. You have to do the work that's necessary. And sometimes that's difficult. It's painful.
Oh, it was very difficult. I shed so many tears. It was unbelievable. I'd lay on my back and fill my ears every night. Right? But you just have to tell yourself that it's worth it. It's so worth it. And take inspiration from where you can. I'll give you the silly one. I haven't told you about the turtle, have I?
No.
Okay, so in Unpacking the Attic, there's actually a chapter I entitled, Did I Tell You About the Turtle? And it's about this very thing with the broken neck, oddly. When I was in grade school, it was the fevered wish of every child to find a box turtle before the last day of school, because we had a school picnic. And the big culminating event of the year was the turtle race. And so we would paint with nail polish of our color choice, our race number on the back of our little creature, and then hope that he would run to the finish line, right? And there was a big trophy for the turtle race winner. Well, this one particular year, my father brought home a turtle that had been hit by a car and had left on the side of the road to die. Mm-hmm. And when we got to him, the poor thing had a cracked shell, and he actually had maggots inside of him, eating on him while eating him alive. Oh, it was just awful. And so we would give him warm Epsom salt baths, which made the little maggots let go and would kill the bacteria. And he fed him mealworms and tomatoes, and he had quite the gourmet menu. And he got to where he would actually come out and want to play with us. And he would try to swim in the waters. We held him up and exercise, and he healed. He healed completely.
That's fabulous.
And had he known which direction the finish line was in, he would have won. And the finish line was here, and he took off that way, but he was the fastest little turtle. And I kept envisioning, if a tiny creature, a turtle, right, a reptile, has that spark, that will to live, that drive to recover from such a traumatic injury and win races in his future, I kept telling myself, how much more divine are we? How much more life spark and force and will do we have as human beings? If the turtle can do it, by golly, I'm going to do it, right? Because everything was at stake. Every tomorrow I had was at stake. Was it willing to power through that pain? Absolutely. Was it willing to visualize the future that I wanted for myself over and over and over as the tears ran into my ears? Yes, it was worth it. Because 2 years later, not only was I mobile and up and walking, and I don't have full mobility, but I can't go any farther than that on that side, but I can move my head, right? I'm not like wired together. And I did dance. I was on stage at the Palace Show at Six Flags over Mid-America. Wow. I was chosen to, my audition number was 2,047. And I had strep throat, and I waited all day long for my audition. And when it was finally my turn, I had eaten, like a bag of throat lozenges and so forth. And I'm tired and I'm sick. I get up on that stage and the adrenaline kicks in. And I sang the most rousing I could have danced all night you ever heard.
Okay.
And then they said, you've passed the singing round. We'll put you into the dance round. Now, this is a person that they said would be paralyzed from the neck down 2 years earlier. And I was one of 2 girls that were hired. Wonderful. They had a 6 women, 6 men in this show. 4 of the women had been invited to return. They had been in the show the previous year, and they had been invited to return. So they had 2 openings for women, and I was hired.
What happened to the piano playing?
So that's interesting. I gave it up completely. I lost my perfect pitch, all the swelling inflammation and the spinal damage. So I had that issue. And being in the cervical collar for a year damaged the nerves and the muscles in my shoulders, and I could no longer hold my arms up more than about an hour at a time. So I couldn't practice anymore the length of time I used to be able to. So I pivoted. And instead of majoring in piano performance, I majored in music theory composition. Best thing that ever happened. See, what I didn't realize at 14 when I was so determined to be a concert pianist was what that actually, the reality of that job, the reality of that lifestyle. And that's an advice I would give anybody seeking a job. If you think you know what you want to do, go talk to someone who actually does that job, shadow them, find out what the reality of the day-to-day life of that job really is. Because what I found out, a concert pianist learns one piece of music, and then they perform that same piece of music for the next 3 to 4 years, over and over and over and over. Their agent just keeps booking them in a different city. So you just go from one different orchestra to the next, literally globally, like you might be performing in Istanbul, and then you're performing in Budapest, and then you're performing in Vienna, and then you get the picture, right? But to you, as the artist, you have one piece of music that you've memorized, and you play that over and over and over and over and over again for different orchestras. You live out of a suitcase. You have no family life. I would have had no husband, no child, no home. I would have lived as a gypsy in a hotel room with my suitcase going from orchestra to orchestra. It would have been very isolating. And I realized that would have destroyed my spirit. That was not the life that I was meant to live. And it took something so profound as breaking my neck, because I was so stubborn, to get me to pivot to where I needed to actually be.
It was also because you're multi-talented.
Oh,
So
yes.
you don't play the piano anymore,
Well,
but you do.
yeah.
You sing, you dance. Tell them about the rest of your.
Well, yeah, and actually now I do play the piano again. I have actually, over the last year and a half, I have composed and recorded over 300 music piano solos.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I'm back to doing it again, but in a different way. I'm not performing one giant work composed by someone else. I'm performing many, 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 many piano pieces composed by me. Right. And it's for my YouTube channel, My Best Friends Live in the Woods, which is another novel that I've written. And it is about the animals in the enchanted forest. And the main character is Albert Raccoon. He's adopted by Mother Skunk and her 23 children. And the idea of this particular novel, it teaches concepts of compassion and mindfulness in a very fun, interactive way, where there's no pre-prejudices of politics or governments, or, by having the characters little forest animals, you don't bring to it any like political, social, economic. So we can focus strictly on the concept of living in community, or compassion, or is bullying ever acceptable, or you get the idea. Each chapter has a focus, a teaching focus. And as we know, when you tell a story, when you go to see a movie, for say, at the theaters, you're not sitting there in silence. There's music giving your psyche the emotional context in which the story is taking place, right?
Yeah.
The music informs the emotion. If you're walking up to a closet and it's going la, 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 you're not expecting something horrible when you open the door. But if the music goes dun, 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 oh no, something's coming, right?
Yeah.
Right? So I compose all the background music to create the environment in which the story lives.
That's wonderful.
So I have sort of come full circle here, but the point being, I have always been the keeper of my own calendar, and I have always been the creator of my own opportunity. So every job I have ever had, I have made up this job. I have created it on my own. The only time I ever had an employer was Six Flags over in America, when I was singing and dancing in the Palace Show. I began teaching piano. Well, I was 14, so I don't know what grade that would have been, maybe 7th. And I've been teaching piano ever since. I run an active music studio, still do. But at each point in my life, I've managed to pivot and do something of my own creative inspiration, follow my own passion, so that I started the music studio as soon as I was out of college, started teaching. I could do that without the 7 to 8 hours of practice a day, right? I didn't have to have that kind of physical facility to teach.
Right. Right.
So I started the music studio, did that. And then I had the misfortune of slipping and falling on the ice when I was going into, oddly, a dance studio where I was teaching music preschool, of all things. There was a local dance school and I had gone to them. I noticed they had a piano in their front window. And I said, I'm a piano teacher. I could do music preschool classes and teach piano here as well. So then I opened a studio there, sort of like an auxiliary studio. And that brought more people in, and then they got them interested in dance classes. And then his dance students got interested in music. So it was a win-win. And
I love
so
those
I just went and
win-wins.
said, yeah, exactly. So I just went, I noticed that piano, I was passing by, I saw it in the window, and I went in and I talked to the owner. I said, you know what? I could make that space work for you. I'll share some of my profit. I'll split it with you 60-40. You bring me students, we'll share the income. And I started a music preschool class. So I had 20 little kids on a dance floor in the morning before they started teaching dance. And so sometimes you can create your own job opportunities by just asking. Be creative, think out of the box, say, I have this skill I can offer you, and I'm willing to share in the profits of this endeavor. If you give me the space and the access to the students, then I will provide this service and I will give you the spin-off income that you have to do nothing for, right?
And you don't have the overhead. You don't have the
Right.
infrastructure. It's there.
Exactly. Because I could see this hundreds of little kids, piano age students, walking into his studio every single evening, right? And that gave me access. I didn't have to spend any advertising dollars. I just put a sign up on the wall, piano with Miss Ann, and I was there and I greeted everybody and I was friendly and I filled up that music studio.
Wow.
So sometimes you just have to offer. It's like, here's what I can do. Here's what I have to offer. Let's talk. Let's be creative. Let's come up with this idea that we can flesh out together, right? And I taught there for years.
And you have to pay attention.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention to your surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
You have to talk to people. You have to move about.
Right.
And you have to look up and look around.
Absolutely.
You're right.
And it comes with an underlying understanding that offering to give of yourself, to give of your time and talents, always pays back 100-fold. It always does. Always offer to give. Always say, here's what I can offer, right?
Be of service.
Be of service, right? Be giving. Come from this position of assuming they're going to love you, assuming that you have something that you can offer them, assuming that they're kind and generous and they will respond in a positive way. Don't let this self-imposed negative self-image or fear of, oh, they probably wouldn't want to do that. No, they probably will. We're always better when we collaborate with each other. We're always better when we reach out and we make new friends and we have this ever widening circle of ripples from the pond. Just be sure that the rock you throw in that pond is love.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, I told you, I've been in the legal context writing articles about collaborative law.
Oh, yes.
Because there's so much acrimony in the workplace, in business. I think there's an opportunity for that kind of dispute and those kind of adversaries to adopt collaborative law principles in
absolutely.
whole or in part, and so that it's less stressful and so less acrimony.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying learning about it and writing about it. It's taken up a lot of my time, and collaboration is big now because there's so much dissension and combativeness.
Right. And we never move forward that way.
No.
That is always a block.
It's self-defeating.
It is. It absolutely is. I remember my father telling me he graduated from KU with his degree in aerospace engineering at a time when the engineering was a new degree, was a new thing. And he went to McDonnell Douglas in St. Louis. Now it's Boeing, and he said, I need a job and I have all of these skills I can offer you. And they're like, well, we're not hiring. He didn't take no for an answer. He went back every single day and said, I've made up some drawings to show you. And then he went back the next day and it's like, I can do this, I can do that. And he just kept going back and offering, how about I do this for free for you? And eventually the engineers there, the foreman was like, you know what? We can't let somebody with this kind of drive and creativity get away from us.
Persistent.
We will find a job for you. We've got to have you on our team. He just kept showing up and saying, no, I have this to offer you. Let me show you this, and eventually he got a job.
Persistence pays off.
He was consistent. He was persistent. And he had this vision and this dream that he wouldn't let go of. And he just kept offering, right? Because he had the self-confidence and the will to give, and he just kept after it. Well, I incorporated that into my own life, right? I used that as a positive example from my childhood. Obviously, there were lots of difficult ones, or I wouldn't have written Unpacking the Attic. One of the things I had to overcome was the feeling of being rejected by my paternal grandfather. We used to go visit Pop, which is what we called him, at his 2-family flat. And the only 2 words I ever remember him saying to me were sit down. He had this little red velvet couch in the living room and he would point to it and sit there. So I did. And I would sit in fear. I was a toddler and he and my parents would go in and have dinner and I could smell cooking and I could hear them talking and so forth. And I'm sitting there hungry, frozen to the couch. Who does that to a toddler, right? They would finally come back in the room, and all I ever wanted to do was sit on his lap. But he would sit and stare out that window, puff on his pipe, and he never would look at me. Well, as a toddler, I internalized that as Pop doesn't love me. Therefore, I am a bad child. I am unworthy of being loved, right? And nobody wants me. They don't even want to feed me. Right? So I felt this rejection. I felt hurt. And I carried that with me for decades. And so in writing Unpacking the Attic, one of the things in focusing on that incident I remembered was my mother saying, Pop lost his luster for life when your grandmother died, his wife. And I began to put an adult perspective back in time on that situation. And I realized it wasn't that Pop thought I was a bad child. He was in deep grief. He was shut down. He had no room in his heart for anyone, let alone a toddler, right?
No.
And I began to realize that sometimes our negative self-images are really misdirected or misled. It really wasn't that I was being rejected. It was just that he was in grief and shut down. And I misinterpreted that whole situation as a child, right? And we still we still have children that live within us. Sometimes when we get turned down for a job or we get turned down or rejected, it makes something that makes us feel rejected. Sometimes it's really not about us.
And our focus tends to be us. How
it does.
we feel, because we don't know how anyone else feels. And we're more concerned with our well-being because it's immediate.
Right.
It's what we're confronted with.
Right.
And what sometimes we have to move through to be more productive.
Absolutely.
Whether it's looking for a job or being a member of a group or whatever it is. Their insecurities, whatever might tend to marginalize us or to try to marginalize us in our mind or in reality. We have to move through that because no one is marginalized. Everyone is valuable.
Absolutely. And so what I ended up doing was writing Pop a letter. Now, he'd been deceased for years, but I wrote in this letter I'm sorry you were broken. And we both deserve so much more. You missed out on one of life's greatest joys, and that was to laugh with your grandchild. But I understand and I forgive you. And I put that letter in a green ceramic bowl because that represented that big old green overstuffed chair I used to sit in. And I lit it. And as that smoke rose, I got this download of goosebumps and spirit and this wave of unconditional love. Now, it completely transformed my self-image, my inner recordings. By forgiving him, I released all of that self-doubt, all of that negativity, all of that anger and resentment. It went up with the smoke. And now I have this compassion and this understanding for Pop and a love for Pop that I never could have had back then. It transformed me completely. And I would say to anybody that has these programmings that are not serving you, probably from childhood, most of us receive those negative self-images in childhood. Try to go back and relive that situation in your mind. Try to find the root cause of some of these insecurities and self-doubts and stand back. Don't let them trigger that emotional response in you anymore. Separate yourself. Say, okay, that was then. I was young. I am now a fully functional, capable adult. I'm not dependent, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, on these other people for my very survival anymore, right? And so I can stand back, I can separate, and I can give an adult perspective and reframe that memory. And I can tell the child that still lives within, you know what? I think you misunderstood the whole situation. Let's rewrite those scenarios for you. Let's understand with an adult perspective that you're not unworthy of being loved. There's nothing wrong with you, right? Give that child the permission to get up off the couch and find their voice.
That's important. I think that's a very powerful message that we can all adopt.
Yes.
We can all use, because it's just, living is not easy. Growing up, especially today, social media and all, it's not easy.
Right.
And people are hard on themselves.
Yes.
Some people are not as hard on themselves as they should be, given what they do, but other people are very hard on themselves, thinking that it's them. Like
Yes.
I told you, when I have a technological problem, I always think it's me. There's something I haven't done. But I've come to terms with, no, it's not always you. It might
Not
be you.
always. Right.
It might
Well,
be you.
even if it is you, you have the power to learn, right?
Absolutely.
And adapt and learn new skills. So say you're in a job that goes away, okay? You can adapt. You can learn new skills. My goodness, look what I've done. My YouTube channel now has 161,000 subscribers.
Fantastic.
And we haven't even had it up 2 years yet.
That's wonderful.
And that started because I used to tell these little stories of Albert Raccoon, my best friends live in the woods, to my daughter, because I was a single mother back then. I'd been widowed very young, and I literally did not have any money to buy her books. I was only eating dinner 3 nights a week in order to be able to feed her. So things were lean, things were tough, okay? So I get that. I've been there. So I made up stories and we would play pretend, and it was wonderful, right? So years pass. I now have a granddaughter. She gets to be 4 years old, and my daughter says, ask Grammy about Albert.
Oh.
I thought Anna had forgotten all about these stories, right? No, they were right there. So she wanted me to tell the stories to my granddaughter, and then 2 years later, my grandson. So they live in a different state. I began writing them down and sending them. Well, Anna didn't have time to read the stories to the kids. So I learned how to record them, and I started learning how to make CDs. I'm going to actually physically mail them CDs of me reading the stories to them so they could sit down and hear Grammy tell them a story anytime they wanted. So then another couple years go by, and my granddaughter says, Grammy, I love Albert so much you have to share him with everyone in the world.
Oh.
So I thought, well, YouTube. I can give it away for free on YouTube, right? I can share these stories of compassion and community and mindfulness and love with everyone for free on YouTube. So that was another whole set of skills that I had to learn. And fortunately, my husband, now of more than 40 years, pitched in and learned it with me. And he does all the editing and the uploading, video editing. But we bought lighting and cameras and a teleprompter, and we learned so many new skills. And I created another new job for myself, right? So now I'm a content creator. And now we got fully monetized in less than 6 months, which is unheard of.
You're
And
amazing.
so now I'm doing that as another job that I created for myself, right? Speaking of creating jobs, so another thing that I think you know about me, but I had a 25-year career as a belly dancer.
That's when I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness.
Yes.
Oh, and don't forget the opera.
Oh, yes, right. Yes. So the opera never really came to fruition. I was offered a position to tour Europe for 3 years as a lead in an opera company. And it was a dream of mine. I do sing opera. I was coloratura back in college, which is the highest voice. But my daughter had just been born. And they said it was a 3-year contract. I would have had to leave my daughter newborn with my mother. She would have grown up not knowing me. And then it was a 3-year contract with another 3-year renewal.
6
So
years.
she would have been from birth to 6, not knowing me. I would have just been gone. And that was just, sometimes you say no to a job because it's just the wrong timing.
Yeah.
And that was definitely the wrong time.
That's also an important lesson.
Yes, because, jobs are great. That's fine. But you shouldn't do something that's going to undermine your passion and your reason for being and your joy in your life. Right. And I knew that was just it was just not going to happen. There was no way I was going to hand over my newborn and just walk away from her for the first 6 years of her life. Those are the formative years, right?
Sure.
That's when we had all the fun with Albert, telling all those stories. So that wasn't going to happen. So that was a dream of mine. That was a job that I turned down. And I'm so glad I did. It just was it would have been wrong, right?
Yeah.
So that didn't happen. But the belly dancing thing, I told you I was teaching music preschool.
Yes.
At that dance studio. Well, one morning I was going in to set up for a little holiday party I was going to have for the kids. It was right before the holidays. And what I didn't know is that there was a ribbon of ice, black ice, that had flowed from the fire department at the top of the hill down across the employee parking lot because they had emptied hoses the night before. And so there was this stream of ice that I didn't see. And I'm rushing in with this big bag of supplies. I had cupcakes and crayons and all this stuff. And I hit that ice and I fell so hard. I wrenched my left leg backwards in the splits, the wrong direction, right? And fell on my knee. And I literally could not get up. And I'm sitting on the ice. It is negative 12 degrees. There is nobody around. I got there an hour before they opened, the studio opened, and I'm watching crayons roll down the sewer one at a time. Do-do-do-do plug. Well, there went the red. Do-do-do-do plug. There goes the green. And I'm thinking, you know what? My butt could literally freeze to this pavement. I might die out here. I'm yelling for help. There is nobody. I'm not dressed in a parka. I'm dressed in this cute little outfit for the quick walk from the warm car into the warm studio, which should have taken 3 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even have on a coat.
Oh, Ann.
Yeah, I know. Note to self, right? I've never done that again. But I'm thinking, I'm in a warm car. I'm ready for the party. I'm just going to rush in with my supplies, get set up, and then the kids will start coming, right? Well, the kids weren't supposed to be there for an hour. It's negative 12, and I'm sitting on the concrete pavement. And there's literally, I'm yelling for help. There's nobody around. And I can feel myself freezing, right? This is really getting panic time. It's getting scary here. This is before cell phones. Okay. So I'm stranded. I can't just call 911 and have the people out of the fire engine come get me. They were way up at the top of the hill. Why they weren't hearing me yell? Maybe there was no one there. I can't imagine. Nobody came. So finally, I'm thinking, well, this could be it. I'm reading the headlines in my mind. Piano teacher dies frozen to the pavement, And finally, the man across the street that owns the barbershop shows up early. And he hears me yell, and he comes and picks me up and carries me into the barbershop. And at this point, I'm just blue. I'm in hyperthermia and I'm shaking. And he says, I don't know why I got here this early. He says, I've never been here this early before in my life.
Hey.
Yeah.
Divine intervention.
Exactly. And I'm thinking, well, I know why. And he called an ambulance and so forth. Well, knee surgery. I had crushed the meniscus in my knee, the padding, and they had to remove it. And all of that went through months of therapy, and I still couldn't stand up. My left leg wouldn't hold my weight. Turns out that in the rush to fix the knee, they hadn't checked the joint at the hip. And I had almost completely severed the nerve bundle that goes from your torso down into your left leg. So my left leg was mostly paralyzed. I had 30% mobility in my left leg. So I started rehab with that. And I got to where I could drag my left leg forward from the hip, but it really was, I couldn't dance. It was unacceptable. So I had always done jazz tap and ballet. Well, couldn't do ballet at all. Couldn't do tap dance at all anymore. Jazz, couldn't do the leaps. So I started researching other forms of dance, just as physical therapy, right? Mm-hmm. As rehab. I'd run out of the rehab sessions for insurance and had to find something else. So I stumbled across belly dance, and they talked about how it teaches you to isolate muscles and how it builds core strength and all of these things that sounded great, right? So I signed up for this class. Well, I fell in love with it. I just literally fell in love, and I would go 3 times a week, and then 4, and then 5, and then I was pretty much going every day. And I was a student. I learned how to isolate and exercise these muscles. I would come home in so much pain. Oh my gosh, it would hurt so bad. But I remembered from my neck, when my neck muscles started to hurt, I knew I was healing. I was making progress, right? So when I started having that pain, I knew those nerves were growing back, right? Because it was no longer that paralyzed feel. I started getting those pains. And so I belly danced in class for almost 3 years. And I got to where I was the best one in the class. And then the phone call came and she said, I'd like to ask you to join our performing troupe.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So I performed with their company for 4 years. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to start my own dance company. So I did a trip to Europe, to Egypt, actually, to Africa. And I studied in Egypt with a couple of the top trainers there. And I came back and I wrote a book. It was the first book I ever wrote. It was called Friendship Flies the Sun, the Ancient Egyptian Legend of Scarab Beetle. And the 2 characters are the talking camel and the belly dancer.
Ah.
And I turned that book into an interactive children's theater production. And I went to all the schools, all the grade schools in St. Louis, and I pitched this as we can come perform this book as an interactive children's theater production. And it teaches the story of the scarab beetle, the Egyptian legend. And I can teach all the students how to play the finger cymbals, and I can teach them Arabic rhythms. And we can put on this show for you. And then I can do a book signing afterwards. And you know what? Every single grade school in St. Louis said yes.
Wonderful.
And I had them send home a letter to the parents to pre-order the books. And I did book signings the day of the event. They were all prepaid for. And we had this interactive theater production. Well, then I thought, well, where else can we perform this? So we started performing at Renaissance fairs.
Okay.
And then we built our own stage at the St. Louis Renaissance Fair. And we performed 5 shows a weekend at the Renaissance fairs. And then I thought, I could sell books off the stage. And I started doing that. I started doing book signings of the books off the stage. And then I thought, I could sew little baby dolls in little belly dance outfits and sell those off the stage. And they sold like hotcakes. And then I started making little outfits, little hip scarves for the kids. And we bring them up on stage and dress them up, and then they'd buy the outfits. And it turned into a whole spin-off other income.
Cottage industry.
Exactly. We were getting to where we were making $15,000 on 3 weekends.
Wow.
And it was just for fun, right? And at time, I self-published the book, and it cost me $10,000. Back then, you had to order books in quantity, right?
Yeah.
So I ordered 5,000 books plus overrun. So I paid that back in the first year of Ren Fair.
That's great.
So again, I created my own job opportunity by following my passion, by being curious, by looking around and saying, what else can I do? What other things can I offer? And so we had a whole merchandise line by the time we left Ren Fairs. We performed there at Ren Fairs for 25 years.
Really? That long?
That long. And I retired from doing that in 2019. And so that was the first year we hadn't prepaid the fair for our booth space. And then we found out the next year, of course, was COVID and they canceled. So talk about perfect timing. But again, if you're just passionate and you follow your passion and you think out of the box, you can create. I've always created my own job opportunities. So except for that very first launch off, which was that dancing at Six Flags, I have always created my own jobs.
Well, it's clear that you're a creative, period.
And all of that said, I also wrote Unpacking the Attic. So that's another job I've created for myself. And so now what am I learning? Book marketing, right? And I've also started to learn how to be a keynote speaker and incorporate my piano playing in with my music in with my speaking. So if anyone wants a keynote speaker, I'm available. I'm doing that now. I'm calling it musicpreneur instead of entrepreneur.
I love it, Ann.
Yeah.
I love it.
There's always the next thing, right?
Right.
Follow your passion until its logical conclusion. And the reason I stopped belly dancing was because I decided, well, no one wants to see an over 60-year-old belly dancer anymore. That was the cutoff for me. I was like, okay, we're done.
But I'm sure you do it at home for exercise.
I do. But as far as being on stage and all that, that was fun. It was great.
I mean, just to hear you talk about how you made lemonade out of lemons.
And it was fun. And it was wonderful. And I got to do creative things and meet wonderful people. And I'm still friends with some of the school librarians that we sold books to back in the day when we were doing the Egyptian books.
Right. It's just amazing. Well, I hope that people who may find themselves unemployed for whatever reason, hear this podcast episode, hear your journey. It's inspiring.
Yeah, I want people to see that don't sit back and wait for somebody to come to you with something.
And don't expect as I've said it before, so anyone who's been listening to my podcast have heard me say this before. We typically think of a job search from our perspective. If you're unemployed and you're looking for a job, if you're concerned about your needs, if you create win-win situations like you did with the piano situation, what can you do to make another person who has a job, what can you do to make their job easier? If you focus on what you can do for them, you will find that you will benefit personally.
Absolutely. That's why all of the schools had us come in and do this Egyptian show, right? We made learning content that they were teaching anyway fun and interactive, right?
I can't even begin to tell you how driven I am about getting my book
Yeah.
into the hands of people who need it, especially now.
Yes.
And I'm glad I started it by, interestingly, plan, persist, persevere.
Yes.
You know, you got to
Yes.
get your mind right, and you got to keep plugging.
Yeah.
Like your father did. You
Yeah.
got to keep. Don't take no for an answer, but you have to approach it in a civil way. You
Sure.
have to come with something to offer.
Right.
You
Exactly.
got to show them that talk is cheap. I can do this for you. I can do that for you. Well, if you know what they need, show them what you can do. If
Yeah.
it's only a PowerPoint presentation, come in with a PowerPoint presentation. This is what I can do.
Yeah.
This is what I'm thinking. This is what I see that you need. I looked at your website. I know
Yes.
what your
Yes.
goals and objectives are. I know what your mission is. I know what you're trying to do. This is how I can help you. I can
Absolutely.
make your job easier. I can make you look good. Who doesn't sign up
Absolutely.
for that? But I'm
Right.
tell you,
Exactly.
if you make that representation, you better honor it. Because
Oh, absolutely.
if you're not authentic, if you're not reliable, you will be out the door and your personal brand and reputation will be in the trash.
Right. Because, they all talk to each other, right? When we were belly dancing, not only did we perform at schools and Renaissance fairs, but I also started contacting nursing homes. I played every nursing home in St. Louis, probably multiple times. They would call us in to do shows, and we branched out. Not only did I belly dance, we did Polynesian, we did hula shows.
Wonderful.
And then we started doing Japanese geisha shows. And then I wrote another book called The Legend of the Chrysanthemum. And that, of course, I made up the legend, right? But, but it was set in Hokkaido, which is one of the northernmost islands of Japan. And I made it like an ancient story, and we did it with the masks,
Oh, nice.
like the Japanese theater, right?
Mhm.
And I created my own masks, and I glued popsicle sticks onto the ends. And so we did this Japanese show with the masks, and the nursing homes just absolutely loved us. And then we would talk to the residents afterwards and let them try on the masks, and we do photos with them and everything. And they loved it. I retired from doing that. Let's see, I guess it's been 8 years now. And I still get calls off of people's Rolodexes saying, can we please come do a show for us? Are you still doing shows?
Oh, but
Yeah,
that makes you feel good.
it does. It does, because one director, the nursing home, would call and talk to another director and another and another. And so many of the shows we got from them networking and talking about us. Well, that positive outflow happens with everything, but it also happens with negative. If you show up for work in torn jeans down around your butt and flip flops when you're supposed to be representing the company in front of customers, everybody's going to know about it in those circles, right?
Yeah.
So not only can you get good press between everyone talking amongst themselves, but it works the other way too. You have to show up and do your absolute best.
Well, I find in my profession, like Jack Nicholson's iconic speech, you can't handle the truth.
Mm-hmm.
When I conduct investigations, I find the truth.
Yes, you do.
I find the truth.
Sure.
Everyone doesn't like to hear the truth. They don't want to hear it, and they sure don't want it in a report.
Yeah.
But I have an ethical obligation.
Of course. But you know what? If that truth is positive and you're giving and you're a team player, it works to your advantage.
But I'm a team player, but not to the detriment of my ability to practice law.
Oh, of course. That's not
what I mean?
what I
But
meant.
many people don't understand that. I've lost friends. Friendships have
my.
ended because they wanted me to do something. This was years ago. They wanted me to make a representation that I could do something that I couldn't.
Oh,
I said, no, I can't do that. Well,
no.
you don't have to. I said, no, I cannot.
And, that comes back to being authentically you and following your purpose
I
and
am
being
who I
true to
am.
yourself.
I'm an
Yeah.
acquired taste, and everyone doesn't have the appetite.
There you
But
go.
I'm reliable. I'm punctual.
Yeah,
I am good at what I do.
exactly. And you have that internalized.
Yeah. I don't need external confirmation.
Right.
I've done this for a long time. I write well.
Hmm.
At least people like what I write. I mean,
Yeah, there you
they
go.
like the way I write.
Yeah,
So at some point, you have to say, this is where I stand. This
sure.
is who I am. I make no apologies.
Right.
I'm the one that you
Authentic
want to
self.
go into battle with.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm the one that you want to go into battle with. I may not be the one that you want to call if you want sympathy, depending on what you're calling for and looking for. You may want to call somebody else. But we need that yin yang. We need that balance in whatever it is we do, whether it's friendship, whether it's professionally, whether it's family. You have to know who to call.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a job and you're not getting results, a friend, they've been friends of mine for 100 years. Their daughter called and said, I can't talk to my parents. They're going to tell me it's going to be all right. I'm calling you because I know you will give it to me raw. And I said, oh,
Oh,
okay.
there you go.
But,
Sure.
I knew what she needed and I could do it so that she knew that I cared, but I was telling her the truth.
Right,
And what
exactly.
how she needed to pivot.
Right, exactly.
And that people can't take what you have away from you. If you have skills,
Right.
they can't take that. If
That's
you've
right.
achieved success on whatever level, there's documentation somewhere.
Sure.
So don't feel less than, be motivated to move forward, upward and
Absolutely.
outward.
Always. And I've had profound injuries, physical injuries. I've had profound childhood traumas that I had to overcome. And yet, through it all, I have thrived. I have always focused on the passionate direction that my heart wants to go. I have always been the creative, right? I've always created my own opportunities, but I've always done the work to back it up. And you are not the traumas, you are not the losses, you are not the injuries. You are the inspired spirit that learns from those and moves through them and moves past them and thrives in spite of them.
Our discussion today has had a lot of nuggets,
Yeah.
takeaways that people can use. And it's free.
Right. There you
It's
go.
free.
That's right.
That's why I started this.
Sure.
Everyone can't afford a career coach.
Right.
People need to stay focused on what they need, and they need suggestions about how they might improve their results.
Sure.
And that's what I've tried to do.
Exactly.
And talking to people like you who've had interesting journeys, people who've had setbacks and have felt sorry for themselves and then turned that around.
Right.
There are just so many opportunities to improve your situation.
Yes.
And everybody's entitled to a pity party, but if it lasts more than 15 minutes, it's too long.
It's too long. Right.
Too long.
It's right. Exactly. And I never did ever, even with the broken neck, I never felt sorry for myself. I never was like, oh, why me? Or it was like, well, okay, here we are. Now let's deal with this and move forward. And how can we fix it?
Right.
Instantly go to how I can fix it because nothing else matters.
You are an unusually resilient person, mentally, physically, and it seems emotionally.
Yeah.
And I salute you for that because
Aw,
everyone isn't. Everyone isn't. And the fact that you've allowed people into your journey so that they might benefit from your experience and their takeaways that they may be able to use and benefit from, it's just another indication of your generosity.
Oh, thank you. I just feel like that's why we're here, is to support each other and love each other and help each other and lift each other up, right? And in so doing, my life is warm and enriched and lovely and prospering and flowering. Joy is the flower on the tree of life, but we have to water that tree, right?
Well, everyone doesn't water it. Some people do something else to it. And I try to stay away from those people. You know, it's like, okay, you stay here. I'm going to stay here. That,
Right.
you know, I've learned to say nothing and just move away because
Sure. Right.
everyone doesn't want to hear what you think.
Right. Well, sure.
You know, everyone doesn't want to hear what you think. So, but anyone who knows me and has known me long enough to know if I'm silent, I'm still thinking.
Right. The wheels are turning.
Right. If you ask me, because my friend would say, you haven't said anything, you're quiet. What do you think? I said, do you really want to know? I mean, you know, if I'm quiet, leave me alone because, you know, if I tell you, if I give you a response, I'm going to give you an authentic Beverly response, what I actually think.
Yeah.
Do you really want to hear that?
One of the things that I focus on in My Best Friends Live in the Woods, the YouTube channel, it's teaching mindfulness. And I think we can all learn from what you just said, because for me, mindfulness happens in the pause. It's that moment between what has happened and your reaction to it. We can react as a knee-jerk emotional reaction, or we can create that space, that pause, in which time we can choose to respond, not to react.
Yeah, there is a difference.
Yes.
Everyone doesn't realize that.
Yes. And that's part of the teaching that I put forth in a very subliminal, right, way. You're learning by example through the experiences of the little forest animals. So it's very subtle, but yet by example, they're
And
teaching.
it's acceptable because it is the little animals.
Exactly. And they're teaching by example, by how they interact with one another, by having those insights of moments of pause, moments of choosing how to respond, right?
Yeah, it's important. I just appreciate you taking time today to share your
Oh,
journey.
absolutely.
It was wonderful.
Thank you so much. This has been a delight.
What's the name of your books again?
The book is Unpacking the Attic, A Path to Healing Your Inner Child, available on Amazon. And it's thoughts and stories as I dismantle my parents' home. My parents announced they were going into assisted living and asked me to empty their house for resale. And in doing so, the items of my childhood coming out of the house, literally out of the attic for the last time, triggered childhood emotions and traumas that I then went back in time, relived, reframed with adult perspective, and healed and moved on from. So it takes you in real time through this healing journey.
You did the work.
I did the work, and now it's here for you to share.
And your YouTube.
The YouTube is My Best Friends Live in the Woods.
Now that's for children too?
Yes, there are discussion and questions after every chapter that really hone in on the teachings, and the questions help you relate the teachings to your own life. So in a perfect world, the adult would watch it with the younger person and then go through the discussion and questions with them. However, I'm finding we now have, like I said, over 161,000 subscribers, all of them adults. And I'm finding that people are starting to answer the questions in the comments. So the discussions and questions, they're using them for their own self-reflective journey and their own healing journeys, right?
That's important too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of deep inner meaning in the stories. I'm sure a lot of that would go over the head of a child, but as an adult watching, you pick up on all of these things.
Well, for parents that watch it, it may
Yes,
help them modify how they've been interacting with their children.
it does. It gives you a springboard too to have discussions about these things like bullying, for example, that are hard to have a discussion with, especially if you have a belligerent like tween.
Right.
Yeah. And
Or at work.
Or, yeah, exactly. And it really does give you a vehicle that's a non threatening, non judgmental, fun vehicle to open up some pretty serious topics of discussion. So,
Now, I understand you're starting a podcast.
yes, my podcast is also going to be on YouTube. We'll be airing the segments on My Best Friends Live in the Woods. We're also looking into starting a separate channel for that, and it's called Creativity with Purpose.
And your website?
Ann Mracek, www.annmracek.com. Very easy.
Well, see, this way they can keep up with what you're doing because I know you're going
Absolutely.
to be doing a lot. And
There's always
also,
something else.
listeners, please go to the Your Employment Matters
Yeah.
website and consider purchasing your GPS to employment success, how to find and succeed in the right job. And until next time, this is Beverly signing off. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Your Employment Matters with Beverly Williams. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. I truly appreciate your support, and that helps other listeners find the podcast. If you have a comment, question, or suggestion, you can reach me at bawilliams@youremploymentmatters.com. My book, Get the Job Done, is available on Amazon.com and barnesandnoble.com. Please join me again next week. Until then, remember to embrace change and differences.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.